Alright guys, we're going to do some spring maintenance checkup on these ATVs, like spark plugs, oil change, clean out the air filter, different stuff like that. Get them cleaned up from some winter riding. They're a little muddy right now, so spray them off, bring them in the shop, and we're going to check them over for a new year of riding. So let's go. Alright, now that they're all cleaned up, we're going to pull them in the shop and check over different engine things and just get them all ready for a new year of riding. I know this one, a little bit of oil coming around the top here on the gasket, so I think I'm going to redo that. Alright guys, first thing I'm doing in here is the spark plug. You need a 5/8 ratchet, and on the Alteras you'll have to move the shifter out of the way to get in there. You just move it up to low gear, then you can get to the spark plug. And when you're checking the gap and everything, there are tools for your spark plug gapping like this that will give you a varying range on here, and you'll have millimeters and inches on it, or you can use like feeler gauges between the correct range that they give you in specifications, and that way you can test the gap of your spark plug to make sure you're gapped right. Then you can get your boot out of the way and start loosening up your spark plug. There's a nice tan color on here, so it's burning good. No issues with that. It is gapped a little bit wider than specification, just slightly. If you're just pulling your spark plug to check it and clean it, you can just grab a wire brush, clean up the end of it like that. Now get any junk deposits off of there. Get your gap spacing to spec. Then you can stick in your new plug or your clean up one, tighten it back down.
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, guys.
That guy's following me. Are you following me? Top end is real easy. Right there. I'll just take this coil off. You can get right to that top. Alright, we do have a little bit of stuff here. I think I'll pull the starter and check that. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and pull the starter out. I'm gonna clean this up and then dielectric grease around this gasket just to give us a little more protection there. Then go ahead and stick that back in. There we go, slid right in there. I'm gonna randomly dielectric grease some plugs here. Just get some new dielectric grease on some of these. Keep it waterproof. Once you get all these out, then we can loosen up these. This is actually the first time this top end is coming off here. Pry it up like that, get it started. You want to keep the order of your screws. Obviously this one's shorter than that one, so you want to make sure you keep them in the same place that they go with. And then obviously the 4 in the middle, can't really mess those up, but those have gaskets on them. Gonna clean up this surface, new gasket maker on it. Clean up this surface too, stick it back together and let it cure. got our gasket makers back on there. So we're gonna slip this back on. Bolts back in the same holes they came from. Line this back up. Should seat down here. The valves up out of the way. Get that set on there, and then we're just gonna finger tighten these bolts down for an hour. Let the gaskets set up a bit, and then come back, tighten this all down to spec. We'll be good to go. Mainly gonna get these top 4 bolts on here. That'll snug the whole top down. I'm gonna put my valve covers back on here. Keep the dirt out of here. Cleaned up, reassembled, finger tightened. Come back and tighten this down to spec later. Alright, the last thing to do is just get back in here and want to crisscross these top 4 bolts and coming back. This is after an hour waiting for the gasket maker to set up a bit. So now you've got a good seal on it. You start with the inner 4, then do the outer. You'll have to get these caps out of the way to be able to get these bolts unless you use a wrench. Same on the front, on the exhaust cap. Alright, last thing to stick back on here is the top, the engine vibrator mount that keeps some engine vibration down. Alright, that's tightened in there. I'm going to pull this coil off here. While I was changing out the plug, the end of this coil wire noticed had broken off here inside the boot, so I gotta dig that out of the boot. I don't know if I'll be able to show you, but part of it's in there. I gotta dig it out. I just worked a screwdriver around in there, cleaned it out. I'm just gonna trim my coil wire back, stick it in there, and we should be good. Better spark connection, should fire up faster and run better. You can see some copper wire in there, but some of it's corroded, so must have got some water in there at some time. I'm just gonna nip off the very end of this thing. Not much at all. Just trimmed off the very end of this thing, and I'm back to wires here. Stick that back in my boot here. Alright, slip this back in here. And it's just little connections like this, like fixing that coil wire, that'll make things run so much smoother. These little nuts on the back here. Snug those down, go around and plug in our spark plug. That little connector clip popped out of the end of my boot, so. Alright, so there's a little bit of a rip. I may need to get a new boot. That's like enough movement. It wiggles around and that clip there fell out, so I'm gonna have to get a new boot for this. Alright, so if you do have a bad spark plug boot, I've got the part number and everything down below. In the description, you can pick yourself up a new one. I'll just slip this on here, real easy to connect. That has a much better feeling connection than the old one did. You got a new spark plug boot on there attached to our coil wire. Starter seal, dielectric grease on that for some extra water protection. New gasket sealer on the top end. Got our oil in, gonna change that. New filter. Alright, got the oil drained, new oil filter, filled up new oil in there. Next we're going to do some differential oil. Got a little bit of metal shavings on there, but not too bad. Just clean that up, should look nice and clean like that. Clean those up. And then just wait for our oil to drain out and then put our drain plug and fill it back up. Alright, about finished up here. Got the front differential changed. Oil change, new filter, new spark plug boot, trimmed the coil back a little bit. It was starting to corrode on the end of it. Got a little bit of moisture in there or something. Sealed the starter gasket going in the engine. New gasket seal on the head. Finishing up the differential fluid in the rear. Got all new oils, fluids. Cleaned the air filter. New spark plug. I think that's about it for the spring checkup maintenance here. I think I'm gonna grease the bearings too. So we've got all new fluids, we've got grease in the bearings, new spark plug running good, and then that should wrap up our spring maintenance on this ATV. Alright, there's one more thing with this. The rack over here is pushed down a little bit. Someone ran out with my ATV once, set it on its side, pushed the rack down here, so it's actually touching the fender there. Pushed this up a little bit, so I'm gonna see if we can just pull the metal up a little bit and straighten the rack out a little bit. Yeah, look at that. I've already seen that side. Plastic's already popped up there. Can pull this plastic off. This is the first time this plastic's been off here, so plastic rack, metal rack. Let's wipe this off. Here you can see that's popped up there. This is pushed down a little. They all just grab a level, stick it across the front, side to side, and just pry this up a little bit. Well, I can't really tell with the level on here. What I can tell is this side is about a finger width here, so I just need to lift that up to that height over here. Also, along here is where this pipe is running, and this one is pushed over a little bit. Make sure that it still fits the plastic on there. I got some of it out of that. I don't think I'm going to be able to get all the bend out of it. See if the plastic fits on here, and I'm going to call that good. This will clip back in. Yeah, it still lines up in there. Probably have to make sure I get these screws in first. We'll screw it down and see how it looks. A little bit more adjustment. Got to pull this bar back a little bit. The screws will line up. Those line up, those are a bit better. I'm gonna start with these screws and then got them all started okay, so. This side is now off the fender now, so it's looking a lot better. Alright guys, all finished up, ready to go. All the bearings greased, all new fluids, differential fluid, oil filter, air filter cleaned. All finished up, ready to hit the trails. So we're gonna run out, take this out, hit some trails, get that grease wearing in. Engine oil, get it warmed up, make sure that differential oils are spooled around in there. You don't really have to do any of that, but we wanna ride the ATV. Come on, that's done. Now let's go take it for a ride. Getting dark out. Alright guys, this thing is running good, running smooth. I think that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow along, and I'll see you guys in the next one.